daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Liverpool podcast brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. It is the Friday forecast, so we are gearing up for this weekend's game against Brentford in the Premier League. It's been a difficult few weeks for the Reds, a difficult month really. 3 defeats in the Premier League, 1 in the Champions League. But Arne Slot's men put all that behind them on Wednesday night after a resounding 5-1 win away at Eintracht Frankfurt in the Champions League. Let's talk a little bit about that win because it has come at a really, really important moment for us. We were staring at a 5th consecutive loss, which is just inconceivable. I mean, it was inconceivable that we were going to lose 4 in a row or even 3 in a row, but losing 5 in a row, that hasn't happened for, I think, over 70 years. So I think it was really important that the team just got back on track, got back to winning ways, got a bit of confidence back into that team, particularly after the Manchester United loss. You know, we'd had the international break for a couple of weeks and the hope was that the team would come back a bit fresher and just a new start, but it just couldn't have gone any worse, really. And so, you know, the manager's come in for criticism, the players have come in for criticism, and, you know, some of it's been fair. I think some of it has been over the top. And I think it's more the kind of social media element that, you know, really kind of just reacts in a over the top way, I think. You know, this is a new set of players. A lot of these guys have come in and they do need some time to gel. And I think we saw signs of that on Wednesday night. A much, much better performance, much more fluid performance going forward. Defensively, I think we just looked a lot more solid, a lot more compact and just kind of confident, even though, and this was a disappointment that we conceded. You know, we conceded first, and you know there's pluses and there's pros and there's cons to that. Obviously, you don't want to concede a goal, and the danger was that after the run that we've been on, 4 straight losses, and then we lose that big game against Manchester United, and we go behind fairly early in the first half against Frankfurt. And the danger was that, you know, the shoulders drop and, you know, the players start feeling sorry for themselves and that, you know, this is just another negative. This is another goal conceded and, you know, potentially this is another game that we're going to lose. But to their credit, you know, they didn't panic, and no stage in that game did they give the impression that they were feeling sorry for themselves. They really just got on with it, got back into shape. And as soon as we got the equaliser, I don't think there was any doubt in terms of who was going to win this game. And, you know, the man, I guess, of the moment and the man that really kind of, I think is the one shining light or one of the few shining lights, particularly in terms of the new players that have come in, Hugo Ekitike. I mean, the contrast between Eketike, who's had a full pre-season, and Alexander Isak, who hasn't had any pre-season, it couldn't have been more stark. And I think it was on full display on Wednesday night. Isak, I think he still looks short of that cutting edge. that sharpness in front of goal, that confidence in front of goal. I think he's probably feeling a bit under pressure now. And that lack of confidence, is not going to help. And you contrast that with Ekitike. He comes on, he's always looking to make things happen. He's big, he's quick, and he's really positive in his movements and his actions. He's always looking for that quick forward pass or a quick forward movement. And the goal that he scored, I thought, was a really, really good goal. I mean, he showed great pace. He picked up the ball, I think, around about the halfway line, showed that kind of pace to move away from the last defender. But then he also shows a couple of other things. He shows his in-game intelligence. Instead of just running in a straight line, he immediately runs in the path of the last defender. And he gives that defender a decision to make. He either lets him go and just hopes that he misses or the goalkeeper makes a save, or he takes him out. And if he takes him out, it's a red card. And with the home team 1-0 up, and it's midway through the first half, he would be so stupid to give away a red card and let his teammates play the entirety of the rest of the game with 10 men. And so that was really intelligent play by Ekitike. And then the other thing that he shows is composure. He's really calm and composed. Once he's got in front of that defender, he gets to the edge of the area, and then he just slows down. You can see him. He slows down, and what a composed finish, just slots it past the keeper. And I think that really, really bodes well for Liverpool in terms of the kind of player that we've brought into the club. I think that there was huge fanfare around Alexander Isak coming in, and rightly so. Probably alongside Erling Haaland, the best out-and-out number 9 in the Premier League, one of the top finishers in Europe, and with the transfer fee, a British transfer record, there was always going to be that fanfare around Isak coming in. And I suppose there was a natural tendency or an inclination to look at Hugo Ekitike at 75 million pounds as something as a backup or a number 2 to Isak. But I think he's quickly shown that is anything but the case. Right now, he's our main striker. He's our best striker, and he's got to start. He's got to start games. And if it means Isak's on the bench, so be it. He's the one that's got to fight for that position. But I think he's got to get a consistent run of games now, particularly now that Isak looks like he's picked up a groin strain, and that's why he didn't come out for the second half. And I just think it just puts that kind of question to bed for a while, and that Ekitike will be our main striker moving forward, and that's no bad thing. It was really good to see us score from set pieces. We've been really, really poor this season from set pieces. And so both Van Dijk and Konate scoring from corners is a huge plus point for us, because that is something that we should be using more of. We should be utilising more. The strength of Van Dijk and Konate in the air should be much more of a goal threat than we have been so far. But the delivery of our corners, I think, was a lot better. Those kind of in-swinging corners, far too often I think we've been really wasteful with corners. But on Wednesday night, we looked really, really good and a really solid threat from set pieces. And it looked like, Slot has changed things up. We looked like we were setting up in almost like a traditional 4-4-2, freeing up Wirtz to drift around that kind of attacking third. And I thought he had a good game. A couple of assists, should have got a goal. Had Mohamed Salah squared it to him, he had a tap in. So he could have had 2 assists and a goal. But Salah just didn't even look up to see him. let's talk about Salah. I mean, he came on in the second half, came on as a substitute, didn't look particularly happy, which is fine. You don't expect him to be. And he doesn't look like he's come out of that rut that he's in. He's spurned a couple of good chances, one where you'd expect him to at least hit the target. And the one where he could have set up Wirtz was, I think it was a bad one. I think that Salah, yes, he needs a goal and he feels like he needs a goal, but I think he's also got to show that even in these kind of bad moments, these moments where he's not in the best of form, he's got to show that the team is the most important thing. And I think if he'd have assisted Wirtz to get his goal, I think it just would have showed himself, it would have showed the team and supporters that he's not dwelling on the fact that he's not scoring goals. It's not bringing him down. It's not stopping him from being effective. And that is a thing. You can be out of form. You can be a striker who's not scoring goals. But when the chance presents itself to materially affect the game and the scoreline by setting up one of your teammates to score a goal, then do that. Do that. And so, I think that's something that was a takeaway. I think the reaction has been, I still think the reaction has been overboard, particularly online, but that's no surprise. I think we've got to separate the fact that, sometimes players can have bad games. They can be out of form. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the end of Salah's career. There can be this kind of happy medium, but I think with his age profile, there's always this tendency to think that's it. He's finished. But so far, I think Ekitike and Cody Gakpo, who I thought he had another good game. Sometimes Gakpo can look predictable, but the bottom line is he's effective. He's setting up chances. He's creating chances, particularly with that very predictable cut inside and whip the ball in with his right foot. But, I think he could have set up a couple of goals with those crosses if the finishes were better. And then he does get his goal as well. So I'd say that Ekitike and Gakpo are our most reliable attackers at the moment. And I think that Arne Slot's got to build around that duo for the next few games. Federico Chiesa got game time, and again, I think he showed his worth. He didn't get the start, which a lot of us thought that he was due and deserved. I'm not sure if Arne Slot really fancies him that much. I think he says the right things about Chiesa. He always talks about his professionalism and his work rate, his attitude, his quality, but that doesn't really translate into trusting him to start. And I really thought that this was the game where he was going to start, given that I think it was widely accepted that Salah was not going to start. But he played the whole of the second half, and I thought he had a really good game. He showed a great attitude, and he really brings a lot to our pressing game when he plays. And certainly in the absence of Salah, that really is apparent. I thought our midfield was really good. Curtis Jones and Szoboszlai I thought were excellent. I mean, Szoboszlai has probably been our best player all season, and finished off the night with a really good goal, a good finish from outside the area. But I just think his all-round performance, his control in that midfield, he's really now one of our senior midfielders now, alongside McAllister and Gravenberch. These are our go-to players in midfield. But Curtis Jones, I think, again, he's had a very good season. He hasn't had as much game time as he would have liked, but every time he's come on, he's affected the game. He's been really positive. And especially with McAllister not yet hitting his stride, I think there's an opportunity there for Jones to really cement a position in that midfield and just make him more of a shoe-in for slot and get him into that kind of McAllister, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai group where he's really, really a senior member of that midfield. So I thought those two were excellent in midfield. It was good to see Andy Robertson back at left back, and I think he was a huge improvement on Milos Kerkez. He was solid. He kept that defensive shape really well, which it's not surprising. I mean, him and Van Dijk on the left side of that defence have played alongside each other for so long. They're just so vastly experienced. And, he set up Ekitike's goal with a really nice through ball. I think he made it look easier than it was. He could easily have overhit that or underhit that. He just weighted it perfectly so that all Ekitike had to do was just kind of run into space and run onto the ball. So I thought that was a really positive note that Robertson was playing, and he played well. On the other side of that fullback position, Jeremy Frimpong at right back only lasted, I'm afraid, about 20 minutes before being taken off with a hamstring injury. So that's an issue. Obviously, he's not going to be available for the weekend. And I would say it's going to be anything between 3 and 6 weeks. And it is a bit of a concern because, he came back from a hamstring injury. And I think Slot has got to be really careful. Frimpong is one of these players, he's quite short and he's fast. He's really fast. And the thing about these speedsters, they really, really rely on their fast twitch muscles, their hamstrings. And we've seen it happen so many times in the past where if they're overworked or they don't recover properly from a hamstring and they do it again and again and again, it just can become a recurring problem. And you take something away in terms of their dynamism, their explosiveness. And so I think that's something that Slot has really got to be wary of and manage that really well. That said, I thought Connor Bradley did well. It was one of his better games this season, and he could have actually scored twice. So that was really positive to see Connor Bradley back to some of the form that he showed last season. Marbadashvili in goal, I thought, made a couple of really smart saves. Disappointed that we conceded first. I don't really blame him for that. But overall, look, a really good win. That performance was, definitely more like a Liverpool team. Good energy off the ball, much more positive going forward. I would put in a note of caution, and this is not to kind of rain on our own parade. It was a big win, and it was a really important win. But the note of caution is that Eintracht Frankfurt do concede goals. This was their third 5-1 game in a row in the Champions League. They beat Galatasaray 5-1. They lost to, I think it was Atletico Madrid 5-1. And now we've beaten them 5-1. And they concede and score goals for fun in the Bundesliga. So whilst I think it's a great confidence booster that we got the win and a big win under our belts, I'm not sure that we're going to find too many teams defending like that in the Premier League. And the next team that we face in the Premier League is Brentford. And we'll preview that game right after this break. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Okay, so Liverpool are the visitors to Brentford for this Saturday's game. It's a Saturday night game. It's an 8 p.m. kickoff UK time. That is 3 p.m. Eastern time. Both teams are coming into this fixture with, I'd say, patchy form, although Brentford do come into this game off the back of that 2-0 win against West Ham, which sees them sitting in 13th place in the Premier League on 10 points. They've had a change in manager. Obviously, Thomas Frank left for Spurs, really hugely popular and influential manager at Brentford. He's the guy that took them into the Premier League. And really, he did so well. He did so well to take them into the Premier League and then just keep them there and keep them there comfortably. They were never a team that at any stage do you think, right, they're just going to get relegated. I think that's one of his great achievements is that, and as a club, that they entered into the Premier League and it feels like they've been there for like 10, 20 years. But they only got promoted into the Premier League in 2021, but it just feels a lot longer than that. And I think that's a huge credit to Thomas Frank because it does show how well that they've adapted in the Premier League. And one of the reasons is that they had a coach in Thomas Frank that was, I think he was very pragmatic and he just played to the team's strengths. And, you've seen managers come in the past, they take teams up and they're ideologues and they've got one way of playing. And even if they have the players or they don't have the players to play that style, they'll carry on. And they'll carry on until they get relegated and they still won't change. But Thomas Frank, I think he's very pragmatic and he plays to his team's strengths. And I think that Spurs will benefit from that. And Brentford benefited from that when he was manager. Now, he's given way to Keith Edwards, who was their former set-piece coach. So, they've got a bit of continuity there. Edwards knows the club really, really well. And I think it's interesting that he's been promoted from within as a set-piece coach. And I think that may give us a clue as to Brentford's tactical approach at the weekend. I think long balls, sitting deep, playing on the counter-attack, much like United did against us last weekend. I think that will be their tactical play against Liverpool. And, Thomas Frank used to do that. I think he used to like 5 at the back. And I think Edwards has continued in many of the games to play that system, to play that formation. And so I think that it's going to be a real battle for Liverpool. And I think they're really going to have to, to win those aerial duels, they're going to have to be quite physical to come out of this game with any points. We've got a good record against Brentford. We've won our last 5 games against them, and we've scored at least once in every game that we've played against Brentford since they made it into the Premier League. Although, having said all that, we are not, I don't know why we don't like London at the moment. We're not travelling to London very well recently, and we've lost the last 4 games in the capital. So, you would hope that that's going to be reversed in this weekend's fixture. Jordan Henderson is going to be lining up for Brentford against Liverpool, where he enjoyed so much success. He was there for a very, very long time, and that is the club that he's most associated with. And so you can be sure that he's going to be up for this game. And we'll really want to put in a good performance against his old team. He was a great leader. I thought he was a great captain. And, despite that ill-fated move to Saudi, and then he moved to Ajax, he's come back to the Premier League, and I think he's performed really well for Brentford. He's used his experience, his undoubted leadership qualities, as well as contributing a couple of really, really nice assists for his team. So I think that's going to be an interesting battle in the middle of the park, and it will be a battle. And so in terms of a predicted lineup for Liverpool, Mahmoud will continue in goal while Alisson recovers from that hamstring injury. I think the back four, again, I think is going to be an interesting one. Konate, Van Dijk, you can put your money on that being the centre-back pairing. But I do think that Slot, I've said it before, I think he's got to go with experience now for the next few games. We've got a good result in the Champions League, and now it's a tough away fixture in the Premier League. And bearing in mind that it's a Brentford team that is going to use set pieces. We've got a set piece coach as Brentford manager now. So I think that Konate, Van Dijk obviously start. I would continue with Andy Robertson at left back. I think that we just need to get a string of results now. And I think Robertson showed really good form on Wednesday night, and I think he should continue. Whether he does, obviously Slot may want to rotate further and bring in Kirkes because he didn't play midweek. But I would stick with Robertson. And at right back, now that Frimpong is out, I'd put Joe Gomez in at right back, again to just add height to that Liverpool back line and to counter those, Brentford long balls, and just give a bit more defensive solidity. So that's the back four that I would go for: Gomez, Konate, Van Dijk, and Robertson. I think in midfield, again, I think McAllister, he came on as a sub on Wednesday night and he just still doesn't look right. And so I would keep him on the bench, and I would start with Curtis Jones and Dominic Szoboszlai, who have shown, excellent form. A lot of this obviously depends on the fitness of Ryan Gravenberch, who he didn't feature on Wednesday night, and it's an ankle injury. Obviously, it all depends on the fitness news whether he's fit enough to start. If he is, then it's likely to be Gravenberch and Szoboszlai that play. But I think Jones has done enough really to get a starting berth. I really do. And if Gravenberch doesn't play, I would play Jones and Szoboszlai and Florian Wirtz in that midfield three. And it could be a midfield four. It depends on how Slot tactically lines up. In terms of the front three, I would start with Mohamed Salah, and I would give the other two positions to Hugo Ekitike and Cody Gakpo, who, as I've mentioned, I think those two, Ekitike, Gakpo, have been our most effective and reliable strikers. So I would just start with those two. And I would start with Salah. I think that he's out of form. I don't think that this is the end of Mohamed Salah. I really don't. And I think as a team, we've got to get him up and running. It doesn't mean that we do that at the detriment of the team, but I think having a Mohamed Salah that's producing goals and assists, it can only help us and put us in a good position to win silverware this season. So I think that would be certainly would be my starting 11. And so in terms of a predicted score, I do think that midweek win was a big win for us, and we just looked a lot more solid defensively. And I think that, if we can come away with another win, I think it will just be a really, really big win. You've also got to factor in that we're playing on Saturday. If we do win, we're just a point behind Arsenal. Arsenal, I believe, are playing on Sunday, and they're playing against Crystal Palace, and that's not going to be an easy game. So we've got to make sure now that we're just picking up points now and slowly playing ourselves back into form, because whilst Arsenal are top of the league and they are looking very solid, defensively looking very sound, they don't look like they're conceding a lot of goals, and they will, but just purely because of the fact that they are strong in those set pieces. They're always going to create chances, and come away with 1-0 wins like they did last week. But there is going to come a point in the season where they will feel the pressure, where they will have a defeat or a draw to deal with. And it's going to be how they deal with that. And we've got to be in a position where we can pounce, where we can capitalise on any slip up by Arsenal, because that is their big Achilles heel. And that's the one thing that we've got over them, is that Arsenal are always, they're the bridesmaid. They're always looking to win, but they never do. And I think we've got to really play on that and press on that insecurity that Arsenal inevitably will feel until that time where they do get over the line and win the Premier League. But up until then, we've got to keep winning our games and putting pressure on Arsenal. Right, I think we'll leave it there. That's all for today. You've been listening to the Daily Liverpool Podcast, brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back after the Brentford game to bring you all the post-game reaction and analysis. Until next time, thank you for listening.
Your daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.